Thanks, guys, and thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me again on EMEA virtual tool. I have done it. This is the second time, so it's always a pleasure sharing the knowledge and being with you guys. As I said, today we're going to be talking about APEX automated testing. As annoying as interesting it is, so I'm hoping you're going to stay with me till the end. Before I start, just briefly, I don't know if you're familiar. So there's APEX 21.2 is just around the corner, so it's just been released to apex.oracle.com. So if you want to try it out and see the latest features, APEX team has, of course, organized APEX office hours for us. So there was one already happened last week, I think, and another one is coming up. So if you want to check out the APEX office hours website, there's information about it, so you can check it out and stay up to date. With that said, only thing I'm going to add to my news session is there's a Australian Oracle user group also this year, as every year, is organizing a conference. I'm on committee for APEX there and helping them organize that. So we're happy to announce the program for this year. There's many great sessions and speakers. So hopefully you're going to guys be joining us there as well. I think it's going to be really good in terms of the time zone for some of people in Europe as well at some point, right? So check that out as well. A little bit about myself. I'm an Oracle ace. I've been presenting around for quite a few years now. Started in Australia, New Zealand, and now trying to do Europe and other parts of the world. Done CaseCo a few times around. So pretty much this is in short about me today. And nowadays I'm consulting for skill builders. As if you need any more details about skill builders, please check that website. With that said, pretty much automated testing. First association for many people is like, oh, annoying or rarely run or costly or these other things normally that I get. And how many sites and projects have you worked on where you've seen an automated test actually being implemented or in place? Pretty much 0 or 1, right? So it wouldn't be that many. And similar to me, and that's the reason why, I mean, there's so many of these frameworks and tools that we can use, but mostly because it's just costly, people don't seem to do any, right? Which is probably the worst of all, right? It's better to have some than or any than none, right? And why I decided to do this today is because I am strongly in favor that the automated test needs to be a part of every or modern software lifecycle that we nowadays do, right? And another reason why, because I've seen, I'm just going to skip one slide here, because I've seen Hayden presenting on Cypress before, so I highly recommend his video if you want to check it out and sort of fill in details on my presentation as well, so that we're going to be covering different things. But what interests me the most, because I've tried before APEX automated test framework or tool by Simon Hunt, right? And I'm hoping you hear for that one before, where he presented and I tested it out, but simply we as a team or as a companies, we couldn't get that to be accepted by other clients as a standard, right? So Hayden presented Cypress, and I got in touch with Hayden, and then sort of we discussed, and I just said I want to give it a go. And the reason I'm presenting to you today on this topic is because I think this is probably the best and the easiest option we have currently for APEX to implement automated tests, right? And where I found it very handy, and if you ever had to manage more than just one app, or if you like a manager of your team of several developers, and when an upgrade happens, for example, APEX 21.2 is coming up, nothing is going to save you more time than having automated tests ready for you. And now it just comes down, why Cypress? Pretty much it's because it's easy to learn and it's easy to get going, and you see what I mean in just a sec. So I'll just hop on and we pretty much we can see that straight up in action. So I'm here on my so I open just a git bash, and we're going to be creating so we're going to creating just a directory. So I'm going to call it test EMEA, Okay, so I position myself into that directory. So if you have a laptop or if you want to follow along, pretty much all of these scripts and things I'm going to be running, I'm happy to share. So there's nothing secret here. So if I do npm init -y in this directory, it's going to initialize my my project. Perfect. And then we're going to say I want to install my npm install Cypress -d. There's a few versions of this command. So I'm installing here Cypress, and you'll see that. So the only requirement or prerequisite for this is you need to have Node.js installed. And because I had it, I didn't go into, because that would take a little bit. Perfect. So it installed. And then if I say npx Cypress open, I am now already ready to run my Cypress, right? This is like 5 seconds or what, or maybe let's say a minute of time, right, to get this done. And if you can see my screen, this is what I get as a result. So this is a Cypress, let's say, graphical user interface, right? So at this point, we have Cypress installed, we have it configured, and we're able to run tests. I'll just briefly going to jump into my newly created directory. So I'm hoping you guys can see my screen. That's the directory I created, and I want to explore a little bit the structure, and you'll see in a second why that's important. Let's say why that matters. It created for me a Cypress directory. So inside there's a folder called integrations, and things that I see here, which came here, these are the tests which I could try to run and see how they work. So pretty much Cypress team prepare for some examples of the tests so you can learn how to actually run and write these tests, right? Which we'll do in a second anyway, but just, and so pretty much everything that's in this folder, if I normally when I make my projects, I delete these things, so you don't need that anymore once you sort of get into writing tests and stuff. And pretty much I'm going to be closing that one. I'll close this one, and I'll close that one, and I'll quickly jump back to my presentations. So pretty much we touched on installation, right? So you can't say it costs you lots, because it doesn't cost you anything to install it, right? The latest version, I think, is 8.6. The examples of my slides are from version 5 when I started playing with Cypress. So pretty much not much has changed except a few messages and structure of the directories, but pretty much all in all, it's looking still the same. So we've done the first run, and we've seen a few of these most important commands like npx Cypress open, which just tells Cypress, can you please try to run and see what I have in that directory as for tests, right? And a few other commands that we normally run into is like verify info and version. Pretty much all of these gives you some details if your Cypress is running and if it's all being configured fine. With that said, there's one important file that I want to touch on straight up, and that file is called, one sec, if I find it. So I'm on my desktop, and I'm doing this directory. Perfect. And there's a package.json directory, right? Oh, there's package.json file. And pretty much before you start running your tests, just make sure that once you initialize your directory and you start installing Cypress, that you actually got this package or this JSON file in a nice structured manner. Otherwise, your code might not work. It used to have dependency on this not being every time perfect and correct. So just bear that in mind. Perfect. Hopping back to my presentation. Now we're ready to run. So we've checked that everything is fine. We installed, and let's do the first example. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my text editor. So in this case, I'm using Visual Studio Code, right? So this is so I created under integration, as you can see here, I created an app directory 101, and pretty much the aim of today's session is we're going to be hooking up Cypress to run an application. So I have this is Oracle free tier like APEX service that runs in the cloud. So I have a sample database application. So pretty much what we're going to be building step by step is like we're going to click on the menu, click customers. We're going to say create a customer with details. So we're going to be filling up this form and we're going to say add a customer. So that's the ultimate goal, just to see how easy or how well we can integrate this with Cypress, right? And pretty much at the end of the session, you should be able to create these things on your own applications as well, right? Hopping back to my presentations. Okay, so going here. So under directory, I'm just going to say, okay, I want to create another file. So I'm starting another file. I'm going to save it as, let me just give it a name. So it's going to be a JavaScript file, test.js. Perfect. And why I want to go through this creation of the file and stuff, just to see that there's a so there's a way how we write, and there's a syntax that we write, and pretty much as first time you see this, it might seem strange, but once you get into it, it's pretty much always the same, and it just repeats the way it's just a structure how you code a test. So pretty much what I've done here, first line is I'm describing, let's say, a suite or many, like a bucket for my test, and then in here I'm creating my first test. So I'm going to call it test 1, and then I can say again in the same way, oops, sorry, and then I can define, say, expect, let's say 0 to equal 0. So let's say that's my first dummy test, and if I save this, I will be ready to run my first test, right? This is as simple as it gets. So pretty much you'll see the structure. It will always start with describe. If you are new to Cypress, once you install and follow my steps for installation, I'm just gonna hop back quickly. It's gonna, so pretty much it's gonna give you a link where it says you can click and you can open your how to write your first test, and this is that website, right? And it gives it says writing your first test. So you can, there's documentation on Cypress is very thorough, so you can use it, and it's very easy to get going and sort of learn things that you don't know, and how to find documentation. There's like examples and videos and whatnot. So I just want to point you to that. I mentioned already Apex test automation. So it's a Selenium-based solution for Apex, right? And I tried it, and now I'm trying to say, I think Cypress is a little bit better, right? So that's why we're doing that presentation, right? And now that I created code, now that we created our first test, now we're ready to run, right? So I already have positioned myself in directory, so just bring it over. So again, if I do ls, you'll see that there is it's a Cypress project. I've created few of the tests in there, and for the sake of me just making sure it's still npx, not mpx open. I want to see what's going to happen when I start my Cypress again. And pretty much this is, you would write your test, and then if you think your test is fine and you want to test it out, pretty much you would try running this, let's say, manual or command line command, and then Cypress is going to come up with a graphical user interface for us, which, let me just check if it's up. Still not here. Oh, good. Just trying to find, is it, are you up and running or are you sleeping? See, demo, live demos, 1 sec, yeah, there it is coming up, perfect. There it is, so it's coming up. Yep, it's gonna, you can see that it's alerting me that there's a new version, which I don't care at the moment. And normally it doesn't take that long to run, which is fine. There you go. So this is my test run. I don't know why they call it a test run. Simply put, it's like a graphical user interface. Normally you can use this, but, and I normally tend to use this only when I'm developing like test cases. What happens is that it's very simple. It just opens the file, so I can specify. So I'm in that project. Under that project, there's a under integration directory, there's an app folder that I created, and these are my tests, right? And if I just double click or just click on one of them, they will just simply start running, right? But before I do that, I just want to sort of drive you through what we see on the page. So we have ability here to filter. Perfect. So I can filter. I can find my test that I've done. If I wanted to, let's say, run that silly test that we've done, I double click on it. It jumps up with the browser simulation, right? And it's going to try to run the test. So it's getting ready. Perfect, because it's very simple test. It's going to be quick in like, it's less than like 1/10 of a second, right? So it's very fast. And the other thing is, except for these filtering, there's a few other bits that are I can add new files. I can select what version. I can select what version of browser I'm running on, so I can run it against Firefox or Chrome or Edge or any Electron-based browsers. These used to be on like very limited when Cypress first started, but now it's getting better, more and more browsers are supported, which is good to see. And then the last bit that I need to touch and tell you about is the setting component. So pretty much once you create your project, you could find a few of the interesting things here, and pretty much for the starters, or since we're just sort of doing a base examples of Cypress, I'm just going to touch on recorded key. So it loads a command that I can use to hook up this to something that's called a dashboard, but I'll touch on that later. Other than that, you'll see some configuration details here. There's a project ID, which is always, every project in Cypress has an ID, and pretty much you can read it from here. You can see runs here, so you can go into details of what happens, of what they run before and stuff like that, or you can simply run tests, as I said before. And when I'm finished, like if I'm happy or if I want to change, so one thing to note, so if I was to change my files dynamically, so if I go back to my code, so if I open my code and I change this 1 to 1 and I press save, Cypress is going to automatically load and sort of try to run that file again, right? So it automatically detects the change on the file and reruns the file while I have this open, right? And pretty much that's about it in terms of very simple. So already we have a control of how we would run the test, and just one more thing that's very important to know is like, how would we pick? Let's say I said that we're going to be running an application. So let me just try this test. So you see how it opened a window. It's going to try to run that Oracle Cloud account that's located in Sydney, and pretty much currently what it's doing is only opening a page, right? But how would I, as a developer, know how to type in something in here? So how do I find selectors for it? So it's pretty much very simple. In a test runner or just this graphical user interface, Cypress is allowing us, or there's a tool that's called Selective Playground, right? So I can click on it, and then pretty much I can bring it over. It works similar to any browser console or any browser inspection tool, right? Where I'm just bringing it here, and you'll see here what happens with this line now that says body. Once I pick, let's say, password, so it says sci, which is cygwin.get field hashtag P101 password, right? And I can simply just go copy this, and then if I jump back to my file and I'm just going to paste it just under, you'll see that I can simply take that as a command. To be fair, sometimes this won't be like that ideal. For example, if I wanted to click on this logo or maybe a menu item or something that's a little bit more strange, you would have to sort of fiddle a little bit with these selectors in terms of you want to standardize them. So you want to, let's say your buttons, you want to keep them in one way so that uniquely across all applications you can standardly access your buttons, for example, or titles or different regions, right? And for that, I think for the beginning or for starters, I think this does a pretty good job. And pretty much anything you've seen that I've done in my demos that we're going to be doing and looking at, I've been using mostly this tool. I haven't been sort of too fancy about it. Again, Hayden's session and Hayden's video goes way deeper on that level, right? And with that said, now we can create tests. We have everything needed to run. So I'll close this. I don't want to say because it doesn't matter. These are more some dummy examples, right? Let's look first at that login example. Okay. So again, structure is the same. So we said you've seen me writing that. So I always have describe. I give it some sort of description for my suit, and then I say, okay, this is my first test. So there's a test here, which is called open login page, and as you can see, I'm using a command in Cypress visit, and then there is a full path to my Oracle cloud. And then I say, okay, now when I open a page, I need to make sure that I'm on the right place, right? I'm doing some sort of assertion, right? And then I'm saying, okay, this title that I got should contain, for example, sample database application. Again, this command CUI get I picked using test runner or graphical user interface. So I would just click here and then sort of press here, and he would give me something, right? So you see, so heading here is like CY get title, but I use the other one, which is which I'll close that for now, which is I use a class interpretation, right? So I use .get t login title, which I think is much cleaner. Right? So these are bits and pieces that you have to sort of figure out. You want to use IDs or classes. It just depends on what you're doing and what elements you're playing with on the page. As simple as this is, so we can look at the another example. So this is pretty much the same thing, but you see here that I say now Cypress visit, which is just a command as I had before. And instead of writing, so instead of having that long URL all the time, I'm using something that's called, let's call it a system variables or parameters. And why is that good? Because it reduces the noise in my code, right? It just makes my code more readable. And pretty much where is that now path or where is that variable now set, right? Oh, good. So where do I find my details? So there's a file called Cypress JSON, right? And I didn't make this up, but this is just a Cypress thing. And in this file, you can define your global variables. This is just one of the ways how we can define global variables. And one of them is just, this is the name for base URL. And that's the URL that I'm going to be using in my tests, or pretty much that Cypress supports. And here I have my link to my Oracle account or my Oracle APEX environment. And in here, I also, in this same file, you have a project ID. So I haven't added this. This was added by Cypress. And the other bits I created here, my record key and some username and password that I can use throughout my test track. And with this, simply this command that used to be long as like 1 kilometer long, right now is just Cypress visit, and then I add the part because I'm using the Apex friendly URLs now, and I just say go to 101 login desktop page, which is just a login page of any Apex application. Perfect. So, and in the same fashion, I can try now typing in my, let's say, my username and password. So again, describe, it just stands for test. So I'm opening again the same test, and I'm saying visit that desktop page. Now we're going to be trying to type in. So this is just get that username field and type in that field username demo. So simply type in demo for my username. Then I want to get my password, and then I'm going to be putting that variable that I've taken for Cypress environment variable, and then I'm putting that into the password, and simply I'm clicking on the login button. We'll see that in action shortly, so just bear with me because I want to go through some of them, like because they're pretty much all the same, and you'll see the pattern. Again, this test, open the desktop, type in demo. I want to see if so I'm getting a password again. I'm typing that variable that I got into my passwords field. I'm clicking URL, and again I want to check that the page that opens is actually, so I'm logged in into the application if everything was fine. And then I'm also checking that the title here is sample database application. Simple as that. So it's very, so basic tests and stuff that we need to do in Cypress are very easy. I'm not an expert on JavaScript, but these I found very easy to follow and very easy to modify after I've sort of created ones. And the syntax is just, we need to get used to it, right? Nothing else. And now the last one before we go into more slides. I know it's code, but it's pretty much, I'm just trying to go because code is simple, and I'm hoping to see. So pretty much this does the same. Visit the login page, open the URL, check if I'm on the right page, try to put username inside, which is demo. And then on purpose here, so I want to test for bad password that I'm not going to be able to log in. For example, my password here is hard-coded, so I'm saying I'm bad password, and I'm putting that on my password field. And then pretty much I'm clicking login. And then on the last code, we're trying to see if that login will work. So if I take you back to my tests. So if I go here and I say, let's say, try that bad password, just an example. So it's going to pop up. It's going to try to run. And you'll see what's going to, so it's going to type in, it's going to try to click. Because I'm putting a wrong password, it's going to try, it's checking that I got this invalid credentials message. And as you can see, the test has been, it's green because it means exactly as we expected it to go. And if I hover over these steps that we have here in this test, you can see how it's going and how it's filling. And I can always rerun this and sort of inspect and check the details of every test that I run. Perfect. And now we're going to hop back to the slides. So we've seen how to create a basic tests. We've talked about test runner. So pretty much it's just a user graphical interface. Normally, so point is, and where we're going with it is that you want to script this. So you pretty much, you don't, this is when we're writing and developing tests. But after you have initial set of tests, you don't want to be running graphical user interface for, unless you're changing something or doing some upgrades or changes to it. Pretty much you would run a command line. So we had a deeper look. So just let me give you an example of how I would do the same thing in. So I'm copying just a command. Perfect. Just let me close my test because I need to have my command line back in my place. So I'm going to clear this to make more space. All good. And I have something copied. And you see, so same command. So I'm saying APEX, which is just like execute Cypress run. And then I'm putting some parameters in. And pretty much these parameters, these values are it's documented. So I'm just saying, I'm trying to put the config, and I'm saying I don't want to record a video because by default it's going to record a video, which is awesome, but sometimes it can fill up your disk, which happened to me when I started with it. And then I'm saying this is a test I want to run. So it's just a part to my test. And I'm saying OUG.js is just a simple hello demo thing that we've seen me typing that we're going to run here. And now it's going to spin up, and pretty much it's going to spin up the same test, but it's going to do it in a, let's say in a command line fashion, right? And this is what we can use later. So as you can see, so if I am able to expand this, you'll see that it's going to just, this is all. So it's going to tell you what browser it ran on, which is Electron 89. Then it's going to say how many specs it found, which is just a test, or spec is pretty much equal to a test. And then in there, it's going to try to sort of see if it's run and passed, and then it gives you a summary of details. There's a way how you can get this. So if you want to run it manually all the time and get the results out as some HTML or some nicely readable document, there's a way how to do it, but it's just not that easy. So I won't be demoing that today. But for the sake of you knowing, there's a command that we can just simply type in, and pretty much this is what we can use in scripts. So we've talked about the passwords and the environment. So why passwords are important? So you don't want to be hard coding your passwords in a text document and just putting it in a Git or anywhere, right? So people can see it. So that's why you put it in a configurable or JSON or Cypress config files, and then pretty much we read it from there. There's like different ways how you can do it. For the simplicity, it actually for my demos, this doesn't matter. For simplicity, I just use this Cypress.json file, right, that I mentioned. Now we're coming to something that's important. As you start to write tests, as you try to repeat the actions and stuff, you'll see that your code will start to repeat it as well, right? So the point is, we want to reuse things for the same code, right? For example, login into a test, into an application. That's going to happen pretty much. It's arguable we can do it. Let's say it happens on every test. So if I need to log in every time before I run a test, it just makes sense that I make that login as a component, as a function, or as something that I can share between other tests as well. Or for example, the logout would be the same, or something along these lines, right? So how do we share code? So I have an example here of a shared code. So let's check it out a little bit. So there is something that's called hooks, right? And it's nothing that I invented, just Cypress uses hooks, and there's different hooks, but we'll touch on before, after each, and after, and in this case that I'm showing is before each. And what this hook does is pretty much all we're saying here is run before every test. So I pretty much created, let's say, a before each function, and then I'm saying before every test, I want to log into my application. So I want to open that URL. I want to check that it's the right URL. I want to check it's called sample database application, and I want to type in a demo under my username. This is just a dummy. It doesn't really mean that you're going to be doing this for your test, right? But it's just an example how we can group a piece of code together so that I don't have to do it in every test. Otherwise, this would be like 3 times longer. In this example, I have 2 different tests. So this is one test, and then this is the other test. And one test is just simply checking that password is okay. And the other one is just checking that password is not okay. So I'm combining the 2. Sorry about that. My voice is just keeps disappearing. Okay, and with this said, pretty much it just comes down. So as your test grows, it comes down to structuring your test and reorganizing your code. So there's many ways, and pretty much just bear with me because I'm going to touch on one last example, which is probably the hardest one and the deepest one, which is before. So there's a hook that's called before. Okay, so this is example, the final and longest example that we're going to do today, which is, so I'm running a test and I want to open my, I want to click on a link, but before, so you see that I don't have visit or I don't have open a link. So where is that? So it's going to happen here in before function. And what the heck is now CI log me in? So where does this come from? So there is a file here that's called command.js. So it's just under the structure, and I'm just double clicking on it. And this is a default file in Cypress. And you'll see that we can create like reusable pieces of code that I just called log me in here. And then pretty much I'm doing all of this that we mentioned before, opening a page, checking I'm on the right page, typing in I'm a demo user, typing my password, checking that everything went okay. And then I say, okay, I'm on the right place and on the right application. And then pretty much this code is done before my test. So that's going to happen before anything else. And then once I'm in the application, I can click the menu. So that's the first command. I can check that I'm on the customer page. Then I can click on non-model dialog. So that's my syntax to click on non-model dialog. And then pretty much here what I'm doing. So let me just briefly hop on my application builder. So I'm here. So let me just refresh to check if my page is still running, because it could be the session is out by now. Okay, so what I'm doing is, or code is trying to do, so I'm clicking on the menu. That's one step. So we're checking that we're on the right place. So I'm checking that, for example, I have a customer here, or that my URL contains a customer here. So 101 customers up there. And then what we're going to be doing, so I'm clicking a form. And as I'm clicking a form, I need to type in first name and last name. And because we're talking about customers, if I was to do, if my code was hard-coded, so if I always had the same first name and same last name, what would happen is this form would fail, because it simply needs to have different first name and last name, like a constraints exist on this table, right? So for that reason, in the code I'm generating, so this 3 lines are just trying to generate a random number that's going to be 6 digits long, and then I'm concatenating it with just demo Cypress, and I'm adding to it that ID that's just been generated. So in this case, I'm making sure that my first names are always unique. For the last name, it doesn't matter, because as long as I change one, the rest will be fine. And then pretty much it's just filling the form. Get first name, type in first name, get my last name, set demo. In the address, we're going to put address 1, we're going to put address 2 in address 2. In city, we're going to put Chicago. And then pretty much we're going to click the button, and we're running the checks on it, right? And if we do this using a graphical user interface, so you guys can see this. Come on, test runner, come up. There you go, should be faster every time it goes. And if I run that code just to show you how it looks like. So that's the final most complicated example we're going to be looking at today. So it's going to spin up my APEX cloud account again, APEX environment, sample database application, clicking the link, making sure I'm on customer. It's trying to fill up the form now. You can see that. And then it's going to try to add a customer, and pretty much it's going to also check that the customer that got created at the end is actually on this form, right? So I know what number I generated, so I'm checking that that customer is actually the one I wanted. Simple as that, right? I know it might be complex for someone who is like just straight in these examples, right? But trust me, it's not that hard, or it's not that complicated, right? So going back to my slides, pretty much hardest thing to do as every automated test is like selectors. So you need to know how you're going to pick something on a form or on a screen. That's one thing. And the other one is like, how do you make sure that the actual thing happens? So let's say I created a customer. How do I know that that exact customer was created, right? So these are called selectors and assertions. Cypress comes with shy assertions. It doesn't mean anything to you or to me, but pretty much it's just there's a special way or special syntax that we need to use in order to do this. There's extensive library or documentation on it. Like you can find anything you can imagine on how to do this, right? Final demo we've seen, but I just wanted to go back to manual run, right? You've seen my command for manual run. So if I bring that up again, I won't run it, just so that's my whoop, that might be bad. So I'm gonna clear just so you guys can see. So if I do that again, see, that would be my manual command, right? And what I'm doing is you have specific commands or some config parts of command that you can pass in. And one of the most important is this video. So pretty much if I sort of remove that, Cypress is going to simply create a video out of the box for me. So by default, it's just going to run this, and I'm going to have a video of it. And I haven't had to do, oh, come on. Live demo, Cypress. Okay, argument. I know. Sorry about that. I know what happened because I have a config, but there's no input in the config, so he's complaining about it. All good. So if I just do that, hopefully you're gonna be listening now. Perfect. And then if I was to open my file now, so this is where I am. Under that, I'm gonna get a video now. So it ran. You can see in the back that it ran. It's gonna do finish. When it finishes, it's gonna, and you can see here that it finished processing, and I get a file at the end. And it gives you the path to the file. So if I go back to that file path, which is just exactly where I am, I actually get a video out of it. It's running. Wait. There you go. It's always on the different screen. So if I start it, you can see that it actually is a actual video of how it ran. It's so quick because it's just one line, but it just says expected 101. And you can use now this as a proof that you ran your test, right? Which is we haven't had to do anything. You haven't seen me coding anything or adding anything to Cypress or configuring or anything. It's just one config line, or you add it or you remove it if you want to have it or not. Just for the sake, I'll drop it for now because I don't want to be filling my disk with it. Going back to my presentation, and you've seen, so one thing to remember here is by default it always records a video. So I ran a default set of tests that I've had, and pretty much you fill up my disk. I mean, they were not huge, but I didn't have a huge disk or space left, so just something to keep an eye on. And then we come to most exciting part of the talk, which is dashboard. We are 7 minutes, okay, so you should be fine. So what is a dashboard? So let me just briefly hop on because I have a Cypress dashboard. So I'm going to refresh just to check that I'm in. All good. So as I mentioned on a test runner, there's that setting tab, and in there was a command that I can hook my project into a dashboard. And so if I were to log out from here, you can log out and log in. And so there's a dashboard.cypress.io, and I'm running a free account here. So I can show you that there is no, just let me see, one, go to all projects. And you can see under my billing that I'm currently running a free plan. So you can run this for free without anything. The only difference between paid accounts and free accounts is you have a 3 months period where you can save your tests, versus if you pay, you can save it for as long as you want, right? So that, and some other details, but it's irrelevant for the test. And I could actually now, from my local PC, I can hook up tests directly into my dashboard. So I have OUG Cypress demo, and if I click on it, you'll see I can see the last test that I run for my so you can see that I had tests. So I had 12 results that were fine. These were my spec. So these are my files that I ran. I can inspect screenshots. I can get the outputs. I can click here. I get the outputs exactly as you've seen in command line. I can get the videos. Let me try something that makes more sense, that it's not that quick. So I can see a video of tests that happened at any point. And then you can see, and then you'll see soon how we can actually use this for something really good, which is for continuous integration, right? That's what we all want at the end. As you can see, so I can go through the steps. I have all the video recordings here. I have, if something fails, it automatically creates screenshots of the things that fail, right? So I can use this. You can export this, you can report on this, you can do whatever. There's like gazillions of things you can do here, but point is, it's pretty much all out of the box, right? There's nothing special that I needed to do here. And the last bit that I want to take you to is pretty much why is dashboard important. You've seen, you get all these details about your tests. You can there's a automatic load balance. It should run faster than your scripts on like your manual script stuff. you can make it run in parallel. That there's like gazillions options and ways how you can run this, and best of all, you get recordings out of the box. So we've seen you can do manually, or you can do it in the dashboard. If you have a pay account, it gets stored and saved. And pretty much at the end, where we can utilize this is, so these are the tests we've seen, everything. We can utilize this in continuous integration. What's great about Cypress, it's compatible with all continuous integration tools and providers like GitHub, Circle CL, or whatever you guys have. In today's example, so I have an account here on my GitHub. I have a public Cypress project. Let's call it a project. And let's say I'm just going to be briefly editing a file. So there's nothing too special here. So I've changed the file. Okay. I want to say commit the change. Okay. And you'll see, so if I go here, if I go back to my project, so Cypress is gonna, so if I go under, sorry, actions, yes. So you see here, so under my GitHub, there's a script now that's been launched that's gonna be doing a few things for me, right? And along the lines, it's gonna run Cypress as well. And what that's gonna be, it's gonna be running the same set of tests as you see me running manually, right? But it's actually gonna run it directly as I did the commit. So it's hooked to my commit. And you can see here it's in progress. And then once it finishes and starts running, it's going to be hooked directly to my dashboard. So I can see directly connection between things that are going to be in my repositories, right? And this can be easily included as part of my development lifecycle. And I'm an advocate here. So I know we always expect test teams to sort of take over the testing, right? But I worked on a project and I think we had a very decent policy on it. So as a developer, before I do my push and merge thing to the branches and to my repositories, right? The proposal was, and every review would happen only after I as a developer would come up with at least or minimum 3 tests. So every part of app, or let's say a form or a report or something that I've done had to have 3 tests. And before I can commit it and before it could be reviewed, I had to have these 3 tests. And that's how we created easily a base of automated tests for your application. So as we go, as we develop, it actually creates tests. Tests are being created. And these basic tests, even though these are just 3 tests, were sufficient for us to significantly increase and automate our day-to-day development, right? APEX upgrades as well. And pretty much after that, once you do the 3 default tests, right, you pass it on to testing team to sort of continue working on it and develop as they feel pleased. So you see here, so it went, and I have that one thing failed. Okay, so I can see and check which one had failed. One of them failed. So this is a report. And if I go back to my organization and I refresh, you'll see here that under there was a test that was ran 2 minutes ago. See, so that was directly from my GitHub, and I can inspect the results as I explained before. So you can see the spec, we can see the videos, explore the results, outputs, and download these things and stuff like that. With that said, I have 1 more minute to conclude. Perfect, just touching where is different from Selenium, right? We all used to probably Selenium because it was more native. Big difference is because Selenium supports more languages that, like more programming languages that Cypress does. So Cypress is only JavaScript based. But the other difference is Cypress is much faster. Why? Because it only runs in a browser. There's no other dependency. That just is simply a browser thing. And it comes as a full stack, like a complete framework. Where in Selenium, in order to get videos, in order to get all of these things that you see me demoing today, you have to do lots in order for Selenium to be able to do that, right? This is just, I got these images from automationrhapsody.com, just a website, and it gives a nice overview where they are different and sort of where they should be used in a sense. So you can see that Selenium supports more browser. So if like multiple or many browser is a condition for you to run, probably Selenium is a better option. If you just need the basic 3 at the moment, or Electron based as well, you can use Cypress for it. If you have your tests running in different like programming language, Java, whatever, you can use Selenium. Otherwise, with JavaScript, you've seen Cypress as well doing a pretty good job. And with that said, I just think it's a crucial point that we put this as part of our dev lifecycle. If we are to go into these tests at the end of the project, then it's too late and it's too expensive, and we all know that it never happens after that. So if we do it as a part of dev lifecycles, as I mentioned, just 3 basic ones for each screen that you do, you create yourself like a huge advantage going into future and maintenance, right? Is it Cypress or Selenium? Pretty much it does not matter, right? As long as you know how to get it running and that it does the thing that you want. I don't think there's one is better than the other. For me, Cypress is way easier to get going. So get used to familiarize, and what you get, as you've seen with these commands, that we had nothing to do, especially as just run a command and you get the output videos, test results, everything that you need pretty much for any like normal testing analysis. And with that said, I mean, standardize the methods as you see, and I'm happy to take any questions at this point if there's any available. All of the code that I've used, the app that I have, is all available for. I'm happy to share if anyone is interested. Just reach out, and I'm happy to sort of share everything that you've seen here, including the presentation as well, if that's important, right? Is there any questions at this point? Let me just double check. I don't see them. I'll be around. I'm hoping you found this interesting. I was shocked actually when I started using Cypress how easy it was to get this thing going. And I think we don't have any more excuses not to actually do it, right? Perfect. I can probably, yeah, before I close down, I just want to say, so ausog.org.au, there's a website dedicated to Connect conference. You can check, let's say, APEX day, where we have 8 sessions and great speakers. So pretty much I would love for you to join us if you have time, and if you recordings will be available, but only for members of AUSOG. So unfortunately for all of you who are not, so if you plan to be live, that's fine. You can listen and see, but otherwise you just simply have to be a member, right? If I can, let me just, I'm double checking. If you guys have any questions at any point, feel free to reach out offline, online, LinkedIn, direct emails. I'm fine with any, just, I'm happy to help. There you go, more people joining or going. If people from EMEA organizers are here, do you guys see any questions or?
We are here, but I...
Howdy ho.
Howdy ho. Yeah, I just jump in back. I'm not seeing any question.
No, perfect. So we have 5 minutes to the next session, so I think I can just leave it for a little bit rest, and then people can join in again for the next session.